People talk a lot about why teachers leave. The burnout, the compensation, the weight of the work relative to the recognition it receives. All of that is real and all of it deserves attention. All of it needs to change because at the end of the day, countries put their money where their values lie. But that's a topic for another day. Today, I want to spend time on something that gets far less airtime, and that's why teachers stay. Because the teachers who stay year after year through every challenge and every shift, when leaving would have been the easier choice, they stay for a reason. And that reason is almost always the same. It's a student, a face, a name, a moment that replayed itself at the exact right time and reminded a tired teacher why they even walked into the building in the first place. Or it's a person standing beside them. Someone who says, I see you. I've got your back. You're the best math teacher I've ever met. And you're not alone in this. Welcome to Show Me the Math Receipts. I'm Asale Smith, founder of Number Navigators, and this is day 4 of Teacher Appreciation Week. Today, we're talking about why teachers stay and about 3 women, my mother, Allison, Tanisha, and Susan Jackson, who are a significant part of the reason I stayed and became the educator that I am. So let's get into it. Before we talk about why teachers stay, I want to talk about why they went in the first place, because that matters. And it's almost never what people assume. People become teachers because of a moment. It was a moment for me. Always a moment. A teacher who saw something in them, a subject that opened a door they didn't even know existed, a child that they worked with who made them understand that I have something to give, and actually giving matters. Most teachers go into education because they were changed by it, because someone stood in front of a room or around the room and made them feel seen and made the world make sense, or even made them believe something about themselves that they hadn't believed before. That's a calling, and it costs something real to answer it every single day, especially in a system that doesn't always make answering it very easy. For me, before I ever set foot in a classroom, I already knew what it looked like to answer that calling with everything you had, because I watched my mother do it. Her name is Allison. Say hi, Allison. She came to Canada from England and walked right into education and never left. 35 years, the same field. And she didn't just stay. She actually climbed and built a career, earned authority, and then used every bit of that authority to make sure that 2 things were always true: that her staff were treated fairly, and that every child in her care was treated fairly. So before diversity and equity became the language everyone reaches for, before it was on every professional development agenda and every strategic plan, my mother was already doing that work. She was delivering courses on equity and inclusion because she was watching injustice happen in real time. And she wasn't willing to just document it. She wanted to dismantle it. And she was not always the popular one for it, as you can imagine. That's part of what I want you to hear. She was on the cutting edge at a time when the edge was really uncomfortable, when naming inequity made people defensive, when doing the right thing and doing the easy thing were very different directions, and she chose the right one consistently, persistently, year after year. But people knew, they always knew that if you needed someone to make sure that what was happening was not just technically legal, but actually ethical, you went to Allison. She was the person who held that line between compliance and conscience. And that distinction between what you are allowed to do and what you ought to do became foundational to how I think about education and about this show. My mother taught me that equity isn't a trend, it's a responsibility, and that the educators who carry it when it's inconvenient and when it costs them something, when nobody's applauding, those are the ones who actually move the needle. That is the lens she handed me before I knew I was going to need it. So when I found Tunisia, when I found Sue, I recognized what they were giving me because my mother had already shown me what it looked like. Tunisia H. and I started teaching together in Houston, Texas. Same year, same building, same complete and total absence of any idea what we'd gotten ourselves into. Neither of us knew what we were doing. And I mean that with full affection and zero exaggeration. We were new. We were figuring it out in real time. Every single day brought something we hadn't been taught to handle. And we had to navigate it on the fly with the confidence of people who definitely knew what they were doing. We absolutely did not. And at the end of every one of those days, we would find each other and the conversation would go one of two ways. Either we'd be laughing, genuinely, helplessly laughing about something that had happened that was so unexpected or so perfectly representative of what teaching actually is, that the only appropriate response was to laugh. Or we would look at each other and say, what did we get ourselves into? Sometimes both, and sometimes in the same conversation. That year, our first year, is when we got our first cell phones, flip phones, which pretty much tells you everything about how long ago this was. And I think I'm almost certain that Tunisia's number has not changed since. Almost 30 years, same number. Think about what that means. In a world where everything changes, and phones and platforms and schools and cities and roles and everything, one thing has stayed constant. The number I dial when I need to talk to someone who was there from the very beginning, who knows the full story, who started where I started and has never stopped being exactly who she was in that first year in Houston. That is educator community at its realest. Person, a specific, irreplaceable, same number for 30 years person who has your whole professional history inside of them. Everyone deserves a Tunisia. And I hope, teachers, you all have one. After leaving Houston, Texas, I moved to New Jersey and became a middle school mathematics teacher in Hackensack. I was starting all the way over. New school, new students, new colleagues, new everything. And then I met Miss Susan Jackson. Sue took me under her wing from the very beginning. And I want to be specific about what that looked like, because it wasn't like vague or just occasional or performative. She was consistent. She came with something practical. It was a gift. She was present with me. She would check on me, not in passing. She would actually check on me and say things like, how are you doing? Are you okay? Tell me what you need. She gave me guidance on things that nobody teaches in a teacher prep program. How to handle a parent email that catches you off guard. How to navigate a difficult situation in a building before it becomes a bigger one. How to be yourself in a new place without losing yourself in it. And she told people, and I want you to hear this, she actually told people that I was the best math teacher she had ever met. Now, I don't know if that was an entirely objective assessment, but I know what it did for me to hear it. From someone who had been in this profession long enough to know what good teaching looked like, and from someone who said it not because she had to, but because she meant it. And then Sue did something that goes beyond any professional definition of colleague or mentor or support system. She let me live with her. I was still in my 20s, so I was still figuring things out in a new state. And for a period of time when I needed somewhere to be, she opened her home. Not just her classroom, her home. She decided that her investment in me wasn't just limited to professional development. That if I needed somewhere to land, she was going to be somewhere to land. That's an actual guardian. Imagine a guardian of a 20-something. And I would not be standing here building this show, doing this work, having these conversations without her. Everyone needs a Miss Jackson, and I was lucky enough to have one. Here's what my mother, Tanisha, and Sue taught me about mathematics education and about education in general. The research on teacher effectiveness, on what makes teachers grow and stay and thrive rather than burn out and leave, points consistently to one factor above almost all others: relationship, connection, the presence of at least one person who knows you and sees you and has your back. My mother modeled that from the very beginning, and not just for me, but for every staff member and every child who came through the door of her preschool. She understood long before the research caught up to the language that systems are only as equitable as the people who are willing to hold them accountable. That doing the legal thing and doing the right thing are not always the same thing. And that someone has to be willing to say so. Tanisha was that person in Houston. Sue was that person in New Jersey. And because of them, and because of the foundation my mother built, I stayed. I grew. I became the educator that I am today. Not despite the hard first years, but through them. Because I did not have to go through them alone. When we talk about teacher retention crisis, about the staffing challenges that are draining schools of experienced educators, we talk about policy, about compensation, about working conditions, and all of that matters enormously. But we also need to talk about Allison and Tanisha and Sue, about the power of one person who holds the ethical line when everyone else is satisfied with just the legal one, about the person who laughs with you at the end of the day, the end of a really hard day, or about the person who says, "You're the best math teacher I have ever met," and means it enough that you start to believe it yourself. Community is not a program, it's a person. Sometimes it's a person with a flip phone and a number that hasn't changed in 30 years. Sometimes it's a person who opens their home when you need somewhere to be. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's the person who raised you and handed you the lens before you even knew you would need it. So be that person for someone this year. Be someone's Allison. Be someone's Tanisha. Be someone's Miss Jackson, because the educator you sustain might be the one who goes on to do something like this. To enter today's giveaway, I want you to fill out the form in the description and share this episode and tag your Tanisha. Tag your Miss Jackson. Tag the person who started alongside you or held you up when you were new. Use the hashtag #ShowMeTheMathReceipts. And then tomorrow, the final day of Teacher Appreciation Week, I will announce today's winner. To my mother, Allison, 35 years of doing what was right, not just what was required. Thank you for showing me what the ethical line looks like and for never moving off of it. This show is built on the foundation that you laid. To Tanisha, same number, almost 30 years. Thank you for being there from the very beginning. Thank you for the laughter at the end of the hard days. Thank you for the tears. Thank you for the what were they thinking? And to Sue, thank you for the check-ins and the pointers and the words that made me believe something about myself that I needed to believe. Thank you for opening your classroom, and thank you for opening your home. It is now time to announce our winner from yesterday. Drum roll, please. Congratulations. Your prize is on its way as soon as we get all of your information. Now, everyone, come back tomorrow. We're closing the week the way it deserves to be closed, with a love letter to every teacher who shows up on the hard days. And the announcement, of course, of today's winner. I'm Asale Smith. This is Show Me the Math Receipts. And until next time, teach boldly, protect student thinking, and always keep your math receipts.
It's time for math joke of the day. Why couldn't the angle get a loan? Because its parents wouldn't co-sign. But I'm bunching.